Hi, I'm Dr. Connors, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about just some basic ideas about business, entrepreneurship, and the idea of profit, right? So, we're here in a business school, but oftentimes there are things we don't really think about, right? We go about our day-to-day life, right? Going to school, buying stuff, visiting family, friends. That is, we live in a world, and there's a lot of things about our world that we probably don't spend that much time thinking about. But it turns out those little things are really important. So what I want you to do before we kind of continue, or maybe you've already done it before the video started, is just take a little bit of time and discuss these three concepts: business, entrepreneurship, and profit. Right? So you could kind of use the board or discuss in groups and just talk about, when someone talks about business or the business world, what are things you think of? Do you think of it in a positive light? Do you think of it in a negative light? What about entrepreneurship? Same thing, right? And what about profit? Do people talk about profit kind of in a disparaging way or a positive way? Same thing with entrepreneurship. Or maybe you could discuss, maybe you got some friends on campus that are maybe a little bit suspicious of what goes on in the business world, right? So kind of discuss and talk about all those positive, negative connotations, maybe your views on business. So chat about those when you've kind of discussed it and kind of fleshed out all the different ideas, kind of come back and rejoin the video here. Okay, so what I kind of want to start with a story. So before I started teaching here at Florida Southern, a little bit before, I spent a year teaching up at Wake Forest University. So I'm an economics professor, so I taught in the economics department there. And we had a really close relationship with the business school at Wake Forest because all the business students had to come and take our econ classes, so I got to know a lot of my colleagues in the business school and a lot of the students in the business school. And there was something that I always found interesting. So whenever I would talk to a lot of the students in the business school, I would ask them, what's your major? What do you want to do? And so forth. So, the students would say, I'm an accounting major, or finance, or marketing, or management, or whatever their major was. And then I'd say, okay, cool. And then I would say, okay, well, what are you kind of envisioning? What are you thinking? Do you want to go to graduate school? What type of industry do you want to go into? And I found it comical. But the number of students up in the Wake Forest Business School who told me what they wanted to major in, what they want to do, but they had then immediately said, I want to work in a nonprofit. And every single student, and I started to think, man, there are not enough nonprofit jobs for all of you guys to fill, right? And so right away I started to notice, these students aren't really going to work in a nonprofit. I mean, look, Wake Forest is a good school. These students are going to really good firms, going to make some good money. What I was experiencing, what I was seeing, where these students just didn't want to admit that they were going to go make money, right? They were going to go work in the business world. They were going to make profit. They were going to be successful. They felt guilty about it, right? They felt like, all my other friends over on the other side of campus just think I'm greedy and interested in profit. And so that was what I started to see, that these students just kind of felt like, well, look, what I'll do is I'll make money in the business world and then I'll donate to charity. So that's a very incorrect view of business and of profit and of entrepreneurship, right? All these things are good things. And so the connotation that maybe some of your friends have, or maybe some of the things you discussed, of maybe profit having a negative connotation, or all they care about is profits, it's pretty common. Like you run across it often, right? And it comes from an incorrect view of business, profit, and so forth. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about about that today. So when people oftentimes think about a business and buying and selling stuff, what we in economics call exchange, right? So when you go to the store, you buy something, you pay some money, you get the good, you give them the money. Oftentimes we have a view of this that it's a win-lose scenario, or what we call a zero-sum game, right? I lost because I had to give my money to the store, and the store won. The business won because they got my money, right? I gave up money, got the good. So we view that as kind of a win-lose, right? Or zero-sum. And oftentimes we have that view because so many of the games we actually play are like that, right? Think of sports. There's a winner, there's a loser, right? But you play board games, Monopoly. I hated playing Monopoly with my brother, whatever. But like, there's a winner, there's a loser. But if that were the case with buying and selling and with business, then we wouldn't live in the type of world we live in today. Right? We live in an incredibly wealthy world, right? Buying and selling can't be win-lose, because then the world would have never grown wealthier. If every exchange, buying and selling, if it was win-lose, if it was zero-sum, if no wealth was created, we'd be just as poor as we were back in like Roman times. But we're not, right? Starting with the Industrial Revolution, right? Modern society grew wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, right? So it has to be an incorrect view. When we buy and sell stuff, it's a positive sum game, right? This is what we sometimes call the double thank you, right? When I go to the store, I voluntarily pull money out of my pocket and I exchange it for something that I want, right? The store wins because they want my money more than the good. I win because I want the good more than the money, right? Think about, you go buy ice cream or a coffee or something like that, the enjoyment you get out of it, right? This is what we call the double thank you. Sometimes I'll try to mess with people at the checkout, right? Because typically if we have an exchange with somebody, we say, someone says thank you, and then you say you're welcome. But oftentimes when you're buying something, both parties say thank you. Oh, thank you. And then you get your cup of coffee, thank you, right? That's a sign that you both gain, right? So if you ever want to mess with somebody, just start to say you're welcome whenever that happens, and they'll be like, wait, what? So it's what we call the double thank you, right? So this is why oftentimes people kind of have this maybe negative view of business, because they think the business is ripping them off, right? They win, I lose, I had to give up my money. But in reality, it's a win-win, right? The business spent their time and effort to make something that serves me, and I voluntarily use my money and resources to buy something there. It's a positive sum game. Now, not every exchange, right? We don't live in a perfect world. Not every exchange is amazing and win-win, right? We all have those instances where we buy something and then we come home, we're like, probably shouldn't have bought that, right? I shouldn't have bought that shirt. It was on the clearance rack for a reason, right? So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, right? So that's why when we buy and sell stuff at a store, this is a win-win exchange. This is a positive sum exchange, right? If we want to think about it, exchanges that are what we call zero sum, or there's a winner and a loser, that's theft, right? In theft, no wealth is created, right? So, right, I pull out my machete. I don't know why I thought of machete, but I pull out my machete, right, and threaten you and say, give me your money, right? There's nothing that's been created. Wealth is transferred from you to me, right? And there's no new wealth in the world. Whereas buying and selling, somebody created a new product that people want, and then we willingly use resources to buy that good. There's wealth creation. Something's been created and we both gain. Theft is what is a win-lose or zero sum, right? There's no wealth created through theft. It's only transferred or destroyed, right? If then, there's damage done, right? Okay, so that's the first kind of incorrect view that a lot of people have and kind of affects or causes people to kind of have a negative view of business. The second one is a view of profit, right? So, and of all the kind of words we just talked about, profit is probably the most likely one that people have a negative connotation about. All they care about is profit. So I had a conversation over the summer on this topic, and I was chatting with someone, and they were just upset with the business. They're just like, all they care about is profit. And so I kind of laughed, and I said, do you want them to focus on losses? Like, I want companies in our economy to all lose money. That sounds great. No, that's stupid. Probably this person was just jealous and so forth. But what is profit? Profit has a negative connotation, but what is profit? The simple way to think about profit is it is revenue minus your costs. That is, if you're going to run a business and you're going to make something, you want to generate money. That's your revenue. To do that, you have to have costs. You got to hire people. You have to buy equipment. You have to buy resources, whatever it is you're making, whether it's a physical object or you're providing services, marketing, accounting, finance, stuff like that. You're going to have costs and you're going to have revenue, right? Profit is simply what's left over after you've paid all your costs, right? So we want our businesses to be profitable, right? Profit says that you're making more money than your costs, right? Okay, so at a basic sense, that's what profit says. Now, why does this matter? Why is this important? Here's why it's important. We want businesses to be profitable because let's think about what a business is doing. A business is using valuable, scarce resources in our world, right? We have resources, and also time is a resource. Human labor, our work, our effort, all of these things are resources. And these things are scarce. We don't want to waste them, right? We want to use them in a way that best suits society, right? So when businesses take resources that have a cost and they make them into a product that we're then willing to buy for an even higher price, it means they're doing a good thing. They're taking resources that we value and they're changing them in such a way that society likes what they're doing. Society says, yeah, I want to buy that, right? Just think about all the stuff you buy and use, right? You probably love your iPad, your Apple Watch if you have it, right? Your iPhone, your car, all these things, right? A business worked hard, used valuable resources to make something you love, you value, right? So profit is our society's way of telling companies, good job, right? You used valuable resources that we all care about, and you used it in such a way that you're helping society. You've made something that society wants and loves. Like some of us, there's some products that we probably love, right? That we can't do without, right? Imagine the time maybe when you were younger and your parents took away your cell phone, your iPhone, whatever it was, right? You probably were distraught, right? My 4-year-old, she doesn't even have an iPhone, but anytime she kind of gets my phone and then I take it away, it's tantrum time, right? She doesn't even own it, right? So profit is simply, and I mean this in the sense of society's way, right? It's not just a business term. Profit is society's way of rewarding businesses who are using valuable resources in such a way that it serves lots of people. They're making stuff people want, whether it's food, restaurants you love, electronics you use, games you're playing, whatever it is, right? They're using resources in a way that you're willing to voluntarily take your money and say, yeah, I want to buy that, right? So profit's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It is society's way of telling us, hey, these businesses are doing a good job. In the same vein, losses are society's way of basically saying to businesses, you need to do better. You're taking our valuable resources in this world and using them in such a way that we don't really like. Maybe it's a restaurant. Maybe you're making crummy food, right? Do better. Don't make crummy food, right? Or maybe it's a company that's making some electronics that's just not as good as some of the competitors. When that company suffers losses, it means they're taking resources that cost a certain amount and they're making something that we're willing to buy for an even lower amount. That's called waste of resources. These valuable resources that we care about could have been used for something else that maybe was more valuable to us, right? So profit and loss are really important signals from us as society to businesses of how to best serve us, how to make the things that we want and need and improve our lives, right? Think of all the things that have been created, medical care, drugs, all the things to treat illness, safety features, all these things that have improved our lives and made it so that today, right, life expectancy is about early 80s, right? Go back a couple hundred years ago, we lived to about the age of 35 or 40, right? So all of these things that happen in our economy, in the business world, are good, right? Profit is society's way of telling businesses you're doing a good job. Losses is society's way of saying, you know, you need to do things differently. Be better. And if you don't, you're eventually going to go out of business. And even though that sounds harsh, we don't want people wasting resources. Do you want people year after year taking resources you care about and making something that nobody wants to buy? That's a terrible waste of resources, right? So profit and loss do have moral connotations. It is society's way of telling businesses you're doing a good job or you're doing a bad job, okay? All right, so now what I want to move to is the idea of entrepreneurship, and a little bit we're going to stay on business. But what I want you to do now is take a little bit of a break and start to discuss and talk about the idea of entrepreneurship, or maybe more specifically, entrepreneurs themselves. Good people, bad people. What is your view of entrepreneurship? That is, do we hold them in high esteem? Do we look at them as kind of like, not idols, but like people to look up to? Is what they do good and worthwhile? Or do we have a negative connotation, right? Do we just, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, he's hanging out on his yacht all the time. What are your views, opinions, or also some of your classmates or people you know? Like, do they have positive, negative views of entrepreneurship? And spend some time discussing that.